Infographics are the visual display of facts, statistics, and data in a compelling layout that not only looks graphically appealing, but also is able to effectively communicate both complex and simple data sets. A lot of people think of the visual side of infographics. How does it look? But more importantly, it needs to display the facts and figures in a way the viewer can understand fairly quickly. It should never be too complex to figure out. There is a balance you need to strike as a designer who creates infographics. You need to balance both creativity and visual appeal with practicality and science. Most design jobs that are infographic in nature require you to work with sometimes complex figures, as well as financial figures. The most common type of infographic work includes doing annual reports, financial reports for companies who want to display their data in a non-boring or exciting way. It may also be a nonprofit wanting to break down what they accomplished this year with its donations. In these next few lessons, we're going to talk about how to make compelling infographics and know what type of chart, symbol, or graphic to use in different situations. In my time doing infographics for clients would normally send me a big Word document full of data, facts, and figures, usually around 20 lines of uninspiring text that I needed to make come alive and be bright graphic that clearly communicates the client's end goal to the viewer. Like with any type of design work, we want to start off with basic layout and blocking of our main elements. This will help us break down the list into what's most important so we can have a sense of hierarchy in the design, meaning that most important items are highlighted by even being bigger or perhaps highlighted with a different color. If I had 10 different facts I wanted to display in a visually appealing way, let's say pie charts, as they deal with percentages, and I made them all the same size, they would all compete for attention and make the design piece fall flat on its purpose. If I were to increase the size of one or more of the interesting facts or figures or charts and had varying ways of displaying the other facts, it makes for a more interesting infographic, full of life and begging to be looked at. Same goes for color. A darker themed infographic can change the mood or tone of a design. Using cool tone colors for the majority of the infographic and having a very important highlighted items be a warmer color can help with contrast. Contrast is critical in infographic design as there could be a huge amount of data needing to be squeezed in a very small space. Having enough contrast with your elements can help the user further break down information or important areas of the graphic, for instance. Icon design is another great asset you can use in infographic creation. Some require custom icons, and some icons can be purchased or downloaded to adapt our work or strike a balance between symbols and type. Creating icons yourself in a vector program like Adobe Illustrator or Affinity Designer gives you the chance to create themed icons that strike a similar style with the charts and graphics you have. For example, having icons that have a similar stroke weight compared to the line graphics used. There are so many different ways to display facts and figures in infographics. How do you know whether you should use a pie chart or a line graph? Let's work through a few examples to see the best practices in action. Here is a line of data we need to create a visual chart or graphic for our infographic. 65% of millennials prefer avocado toast over bacon for breakfast. What if we visualize this data using a bar chart? It seems to communicate our data set well. What if we switched it up and tried a pie chart format? Both the bar and the pie charts do a great job of simplifying the data, but the pie chart does it in a much more compact way. Percentages tend to do well in a pie chart style format. Let's add to this a bit further and add a custom icon and labels to the graph. Now let's add a themed color to highlight the more important majority number in the pie graph. And now we're getting somewhere. Let's try another example. Here's the next piece of data we need to work with, this time 6 different items. This is degrees earned by 2020 graduates in a business program. We can use our trusty pie chart. It does deal with a percentages breakdown, but we have a problem here. There's not a lot of differentiation or variety in our percentages. We have 3 data points that all have the same 20% number, making this chart a little less exciting to look at. There is something called a Venn diagram, where you can see overlapping bubbles or circles. The size of the bubble or circle is relational to the other bubbles or data sets and the size. So if we had a bubble that is 20% and another one that is 10%, then the 10% bubble will be half the size of the 20% bubble. I'm going to lay out our 5 datasets using a Venn diagram layout. What do you think? Is this more compelling of a layout? For our next example, what if we create a chart that also took time as a factor? For instance, this dataset, the average time to complete a marathon based on age and time. In this case, we have 2 different axes. We have our age dataset and we have our second set that rates time as a factor. We can't do pie charts because we don't have an age broken down into the amount of people. We just have an average number. In this case, I'm going to share with you a great resource called the Data Viz project. This website allows you to breeze through most of our different data visualization methods available, and you could decide the best way to communicate your dataset in the most compelling way possible. And yes, there's more than one right way to display data. Perhaps an angular gauge might make this a compelling design if I put each age group in its own chart, like the example you see below. I'm looking at this website list for other ideas we can try out. And I'm thinking this pictorial stack chart with the y-axis being time that gets longer the more you move closer to the head of the runner looks compelling. We can have the ages broken down by a different color shade moving up the runner. There's also the traditional bar graph with both a y and an x-axis that could work well here too. So there's many different options, and your job as a designer is to make these charts a visual treat, enticing, but also keeping that data set easy to understand by the viewer. Let's do one more example data set. This one involves the numbers of cookies consumed if given unlimited access. And so this is broken down by age and how many cookies they consume based on their age. We can make this more visually compelling by using icons to communicate our dataset. We can build this using a stack of cookies and each stack moving higher or lower relative to each other, just like our Venn diagram example prior. When datasets start to get too large, let's say 12 different points, now certain icons or pictorial graphs can start to get too busy and fall apart. So it really depends on how many things lay out in the end, or how many datasets you have. You want to avoid graphic overload. Looking back at our website resource, perhaps a waffle chart might work better for the 10 data samples. More like this example of having our cookie icon be in the background instead of 10 different stacks of cookies repeated 10 times. As you can see, there's so many different ways to display data, and sometimes there's more than one right way. And your job is to find the best combinations of charts, graphics, visual displays, icons to create a unified, interesting infographic. Our last topic for this lesson is creating our theme. You may have several different types of charts displayed on one page. As a designer, you can find ways to unify the charts, graphics, and icons by having a similar font style, line or stroke thickness, and of course a thematic color theme. Remember to have strong layout hierarchy when putting together your infographics, providing a central graphic that ties everything together. Like I mentioned before, I like to block out my infographics with rough gray blocks and charts so I can get a good idea of how much space each dataset will take up and how much room I have to play around with for larger graphics, photos, and icons. The best way to work through this process is to work on real-world examples. We're going to do just that. In the next coming few lessons, we'll tackle this long list of uninspiring quotes, facts, and figures, and we hope to turn this into something visually exciting that will make our clients happy and our readers too.